When you think about hope and empowerment, it can feel really overwhelming, but there's absolute hope, absolutely, with therapy, using the right tools, learning the right skills, replacing maladaptive patterns with adaptive patterns. It's not easy, right? You got to get rid of the old negative habits and build up some new adaptive ones. Imagine trusting someone less when they're kind to you. Now, new research actually shows a surprising link between emotions and trust in those with BPD. We're going to dive into this paradox and explore why some people might see relationships as battles and not partnerships. And I think in order to do this, we have to look at that people with BPD often experience intense fear of abandonment and rejection, which absolutely can make it very, very difficult for them to trust their partners. Now, this fear can be triggered by even minor things, little things like a partner working late or seeming a little distant. And as we explore this, it's important to be aware that individuals with BPD, and there's a lot of research to support this as well, individuals with BPD tend to misinterpret neutral situations as well as facial expressions as hostile and negative. And if you've ever had this experience where you're working on change and everything kind of seems okay, but you're uneasy. And that can often come from the way I describe it as a comfort in chaos. And a lot of individuals with BPD are those, who've experienced trauma or abandonment or other issues. But what happens is that when everything is calm, it makes you more hypervigilant, because if everything's not in chaos, when's the chaos coming? When am I going to get hit with it? And that can be super duper scary and understandable, absolutely. Because you got to be on guard, because you never know when you're going to be abandoned, rejected, which leads to this sense of emptiness. Now, because of that tendency to misinterpret neutral situations and faces as hostile or negative, you're always on guard. And sometimes individuals engage in behaviors to actually encourage fights, other types of problems, upheavals with your partner, things like that, in order to create that chaos. And what that does is it actually reinforces BPD beliefs, your family in the head, the things that you say to yourself, and those negative aspects of yourself, because by fighting and getting into those situations when everything kind of seems calm, then you're eroding your relationship. You are weakening that bond with someone else. Now, your BPD tells you, well, but if we fight and make up, then we really love each other. Now, that's called a test. You got to be careful with those tests, because those tests, no one ever passes those tests, right? Never. Because those tests, what happens is that, they passed this one because they just got lucky, or, whatever. Then you give them another one. They passed that one, then you can make an excuse about that one. Then make an excuse about the next one. So no one ever wins. You'll never do enough tests where you're like, you know what? I do trust this person. I do feel like they're not going to reject me, abandon me. And also, you tend to question or build that belief if they pass enough tests that, you know what? I no longer feel empty, because I can allow this person to be a part of my life that helps me feel full. The tests are not going to do that. It is a fallacy that BPD convinces you by your family in the head telling you negative things, by that chorus in your brain that tells you those negative things, that by enough tests, they're going to prove that they love you. It's not going to happen. It's not, because all those tests tend to be negative, and they're always skewed to the negative. So it becomes really, really problematic. And we see threats in all these different places. Now let's talk about what are some of those factors. Let's really explore what are some of those factors that really kind of add to this fear of abandonment and rejection, as that leads to this wearing away of our trust that we can have in our partner in order for us to have a good and stable relationship. Because everybody that I've worked with, that's what they want. No one has ever come in and said, you know what, doc, what I'd like to do is I'd like to disrupt my relationship as much as possible. I'd like to have more stress. Can you help me have more stress? No one has ever said that, and I don't believe that anybody ever will. So over 2 decades I've been doing this, nobody ever said that. So let's get into it. First, let's talk about misinterpreting actions. Now, an individual with BPD, they might misinterpret a partner's Actions as a signs of rejection. For example, if a partner needs some alone time to recharge, it might be seen as them pulling away emotionally. But we all know that, sometimes in life there's so much going on. And even with these phones, we're using these phones all the time and they're draining our energy and they make our brain tired. So it's normal that we need a little recharge time. Does not mean that we don't love our partner. Does not mean that we don't want to be with our partner. And it does not mean that you're going to be abandoned and rejected. That's what BPD tells you. That's what Family in the Head tells you. So what happens is when they need alone time, boy, you don't love me, you don't care about me. Why don't you care about me? And then we go to test mode, right? Well, let's test. Let's really fight it out. And you don't think this consciously, right? But unconsciously, you engage in the argument. So then after you argue, if you're still together, then you must really love each other. But again, it erodes that relationship. That's what we want. That we don't want to do that. And this misinterpretation, this can lead to feelings of mistrust and insecurity, even though you're trying to do the opposite. See, BPD tricks you because it's so paradoxical. I want to get close to you, but I'm going to engage in maladaptive patterns so I can get close to you that actually cause you to pull away or question the relationship or make the relationship much more difficult for your partner and for you. Now, the next component is splitting or black and white thinking. And people with BPD, they absolutely have a tendency towards black and white thinking, towards splitting. And this is how I do it with my client. Whenever my clients are splitting, I like to just go like that, right? Because it's a split. And they see things as all good or all bad. And particularly that's how they see themselves, typically all bad. Everything they do is, if it's good, it's minimized. If it's negative, it's amplified. So whatever good you do, anybody could do that. Whatever bad you do, wow, that's all you. You're a horrible, horrible human being. That's just terrible. So this can apply absolutely to relationships as well, because a partner might be seen as perfect, this idealization, and completely trustworthy in the beginning. And this is that honeymoon phase. So it's that idealization. This honeymoon phase happens when I start treatment with a lot of my clients. Because when we initially start, they're like, oh, Dr. Fox, da-da-da-da-da-da. And usually it's nice stuff, right? But over time, we're going to hit a wall somewhere. There's going to be a disagreement or a perceived slight. And it can suddenly lead them to see the other person, even me, and it causes a devaluation. So that split, you have idealization. You're just the greatest. You're the best. But you're really the devil and a horrible human being. And that split absolutely erodes the relationship because over time, the partner is like, I don't really know what's going on. Because again, remember, these aren't mutually exclusive because so you misinterpret what's going on in your environment. And with the split, it intensifies it because it's all bad or all good. Typically, it's all bad. So then you see the negative intensely, and then you end up in testing mode again. Now, there's also emotional vulnerability, and that's our next component. Now, BPD can make people really hypersensitive to emotional cues, and that's completely understandable because what happens is a lot of folks with BPD, they have trouble recognizing sensory input, what's going on around them, and they have difficulty interpreting their emotions. Now, I just did a video recently on alexithymia and BPD, and how it's important to understand our emotions. And this emotional vulnerability is a huge part of it. For example, like your partner. So we'll use a relationship example. So a partner might be hesitant to express anger or frustration for fear of setting their partner off. And however, this blocks open communication and it further erodes trust because they can't tell you when they're having a bad day because then the partner turns it and says, well, what did I do? Now, they don't say that, but they feel this sense of insecurity. That insecurity then drives them to start a fight. So it can be a test because if we live through the fight, then we must really love each other. So it becomes this erosion of trust, this erosion of connection. But the partner feels this intense amount of stress. Now, the individual with BPD isn't like, well, that's what I want. I want my partner to feel as much stress with me as possible so that then they'll just abandon me, reject me, and then I can feel empty. No one ever has felt that, and people often misconstrue that a lot of behaviors are intentional by individuals with BPD. And I think that this is probably one of the most difficult areas to address, particularly in relationships when someone has BPD, because The other person who says, well, I mean, all they have to do is just chill and let me have some time, or let me, be open with them. And I get that, and you should, but we have to control BPD. We have to control that family in the head, right? That chorus in your brain that tells you all those negative things, that causes you to split, right? That causes you to feel unsafe, misinterpreting different situations. You have to get a handle on those things. And you can, because BPD is the most successfully treated disorder of all the personality disorders. So there you go. Not a lot of people know that, but now you do. Fun fact. Now, again, in addition to emotional vulnerability, there's also needing reassurance all the time. And this can really be draining on the other person's energy and patience, because that constant needing to hear your partner say, I love you, you're okay, we're still together, that can be a lot for them. And honestly, it can be suffocating for you too, because you don't get that breath of air unless, so to speak, that your partner says, yes, I love you, yes, I care about you. No, I love you, I care about you, I would do anything for you. Those are things that we should be saying, right? Those are things that it's important for us to do. Communicating to our kids, to our loved ones, to our friends, stuff like that. Absolutely, we should be doing that. But the problem is when it becomes reassurance, when it becomes a dependency in order for you to be emotionally okay, that's when it becomes maladaptive. That's when it becomes problematic, because BPD tells you, interestingly, well, you need that reassurance. Oh, well, he didn't mean it. She didn't mean it. Because so even though you're looking for that reassurance, and then when you get it, it doesn't last very long, because what's going on in your brain is telling you, don't believe that. That ain't true. So then you go back to, yeah, but really, and what do? You test them on it. Because if you can make up after the fight, then everything must be okay. So we got to look at these things. And we're not even done, because we've got jealousy on hyperdrive next. And it's the fear of being replaced can make you super duper jealous, right? Like your partner is always one step from leaving you. They're always half out the door. And that can be really, really difficult, because the way that a lot of people try to manage this is that they try to over-control their partner. And it can seem like that's a good idea. As we're talking here, you're probably like, that doesn't seem like a good idea. A lot of people do it, because the more control I have over you, then you're not going to leave me. So then everything is okay. But it tends to, it's like a little chick, right? Like the little ducks, baby ducks. It's like having a little baby duck. And when you have the little baby duck in your hand, you're not going to try to squeeze it, hold it really tight, because you're going to squish the duck. Don't squish the duck. Please don't do that. Right? What you want to do is you want that duck to be there. You can pet the duck. That's cool. Pet the duck, man. Yeah, that's okay. Right? Allow the duck to swim. It's okay for the duck to swim. But what BPD and family in the head tells you is that, don't you dare. You let it go. It's going to take off. Oh my God, someone else is going to scoop it up. Hold on a minute. The underlying question to this is, and you have to hear this objectively and manage it objectively and answer this to yourself objectively, which is, if that person leaves, then they left, you will actually be okay. I know sometimes people are like, oh, no, I can't live without them, That's a dependent relationship, and hyper scary for everybody involved. Most people, I would say 99% of people, have had more than one relationship in their life. And if this relationship dissolves, as painful as that may be, and you may need a mental health provider, you may need someone to walk you through it so that you can feel better about yourself and things like that. But if that person goes, let that duck go. But here's what's cool about the baby ducks. If you're not squeezing the baby ducks, your partner in this case, right? And you put that baby duck down there, and you've been petting the baby duck, and you've been feeding the baby duck, and you've been taking care of the baby duck, the odds are pretty good that baby duck is coming back. But when we do the opposite, when we do the things that BPD and family in the head tell us to do, to control it, to manage it, to keep it in a little box, man, that duck is like, dude, I can't do this. I'm smothered, right? I can't focus. Goes to that splitting, emotional vulnerability, misinterpretation of behaviors, all of those factors. So you've got to catch that tendency for jealousy, because it wears away at your relationship. It causes more problems than it solves. Jealousy really doesn't solve anything. It erodes your relationship, and you got to control it. You got it. I know it's hard. I have a video on jealousy I'll put right here so you can check it out. You can learn more about it. The other component that comes out of this is nonstop fights. And when you don't trust someone, things get misinterpreted all the time. All those factors we just talked about are always rising to the surface, right? And fights explode sometimes seemingly out of nowhere. You guys are fighting a lot. You're arguing over how many spoons are in the drawer. You're arguing over whether, glass is clean or dirty, or whether, this is happening or that's happening or this might happen, whatever it is, what you're going to watch on TV, who knows? But everything becomes a fight. And what happens is that fighting, right? What this means, right? For this video, it means trust, that trust test, right? That trust test, it's negative. It's always going to sneak up behind your back and punch you in the back of the head. Absolutely. Absolutely it is, because the trust test doesn't work. And the fighting, that you have to fight for everything because both of you are on edge. Well, what are you going to do? Well, what's going to happen? So really what you're doing is, when you're doing all these fights, right, and you're having these trust tests, then at the end, you kind of got out all that negative energy. And now you're able to actually calm down a little bit, right? Your parasympathetic, right, system kicks in. You're kind of like, because you got it out. That's a problem. If that's how you are able to calm down and get it out, that is a very maladaptive, unhealthy way to do that, and it erodes your relationship over time. It's eroding your connection with that person who's so important to you time and time and time again. But what I want you to know is you're not doomed. You're not doomed to be stuck in this whirlwind of arguments and relationship destruction. And this whole thing with BPD and trust, it can feel really, really tough, because it often puts you on edge, because you're constantly stressed. You're constantly on edge, right? Wondering if your partner really cares, wondering if they're going to abandon you, wondering when you're going to be rejected, wondering when that emptiness is going to swell up inside you. Well, let's talk about some things that can help you manage this and do it different. Okay, first and foremost, hope and empowerment. When you think about hope and empowerment, it can feel really overwhelming, but there's absolute hope, absolutely. With therapy, using the right tools, learning the right skills, replacing maladaptive patterns with adaptive patterns. It's not easy, right? You got to get rid of the old negative habits and build up some new adaptive ones. Not easy. Anybody tells you it's easy is selling you something, okay? So it's not. It's going to take effort. But you have to build the idea inside yourself that you deserve to feel loved and supported. And you have to recognize, I want you to hear this, that you have the power to make it happen. You can control your part of any relationship you have in your life. And I know sometimes it doesn't feel that way. I know that. Believe me, I get it. Because sometimes you're sitting there and you're like, what? Huh? What the heck is going on? And you feel overwhelmed and confused and all this other stuff. I get it. That's where hope and empowerment comes into play. That's where you have to hang on to those things. What is your common ground with your partner? Where does trust begin with the two of you? If you can't answer that, you guys need to start doing some exploration. You need to look into those things. Also, your relationship, focus on progress, right? Change takes time. It's not a light switch. No way, man. No way. It's just like slowly turning it up, right? It's like a volume knob that you slowly turn up, okay? It's not an on or off. No way. It's something that slowly happens over time. You got to be patient with yourself. And when you guys are successful, you and your partner, when you do something good, thank your partner for it. Tell them you recognize it. Tell your partner, I understand this was hard, but I really appreciate you putting the time and effort in. That's awesome. Encourage the positive. Absolutely. If all you do is try to destroy the negative, right? So when it's negative, you're like, oh man, we're going to get into it. A TV and dirty dishes and spoons, whatever it is. All you're doing is you're just eroding connection. You're distancing yourself from each other. Man, don't do that. You got to focus on the progress together, about what brings you two together, and then verbally recognize it to each other. It is going to help you build a healthier relationship. And it's not a light switch. It is a slowly turning up that volume knob, and it takes time. Absolutely takes time. You got to also have open communication. Most important thing is open communication. And I bet you hear this everywhere. You see it on the internet. Everybody says, oh, you got to have open communication. Well, you want to let your partner know, right, what you're going through and about maybe your concerns about trust. You don't have to let them know every day, right? You pick different moments. I like to strike when the iron's cold. Not in the middle of an argument, not when you're having problems, but when everything seems kind of calm. That's when you can talk about, open communication. There's a lot of different strategies that you can utilize to communicate effectively with your partner, which is saying that I feel blank. I am working toward blank, right? And actually using those statements to communicate where you are coming from. You can't say it with an expectation or a demand that your partner is then going to do ABC. You don't control that. You control you. And the more empowered you are, that helps you progress, the greater open communication you'll have. Communication is a skill like everything else. It takes time. You got to learn how to communicate with your partner and what he, she, they understand. That's the critical part. And if you're having trouble and you guys are bumping into each other a lot, you're having trouble kind of learning these skills, honing these skills, seek help. Absolutely. Mental health provider can absolutely help you do that. Really learning those skills. There are different workbooks out there that the two of you could do that you might really, really enjoy if you have the means. There are little getaways that you can do. Recognize the getaways. When you come back from the getaways, doesn't mean it's automatically instilled. You have to continue to utilize the strategies when you're back from weekend getaways, or couple getaways, stuff like that. And that can be really, really helpful. Look, I know you may feel overwhelmed right now. Remember, though, there is absolute hope. Absolutely. Therapy, the right tools, can help you build secure and fulfilling relationships, even with BPD. It can help you understand and manage it. BPD does not equal relationship destruction and loneliness and a lifetime of solitude. It does not. You can resist it. I know your BPD family in the head tells you that. The relationships are too risky. It's not worth it. I'm telling you, push back on that. Push back on that, because a lot of BPD is about wanting to connect with others, but having an intensive fear of doing it. And I get it. And what we're talking about here is building that sense of trust and connection. So you build your relationship, not destroy it. You have to build an internalized belief that you deserve to feel loved and supported. And if you can embrace that, even a little bit, that helps you embrace that hope and power that you can do it. And it's so, so important. You got to take heart in the small victories when things work in your direction, when you're doing well, because every step towards a healthier relationship is a total, absolute win. Open communication is central. Share the struggles you're going through with your partner and work together to build trust so each of you can help each other progress forward. That supportive partner, when you build that sense of trust, this can be your greatest ally. This is like you and your partner against the world. And that feels amazing. I know BPD tells you never happen. I know your family in the head says, no way. Nope, as soon as you trust them, they're out the door. I want you to resist that, because that is likely a fallacy. Now, there's other factors that can certainly add to that, and your BPD is spending a lot of time focusing on that. And we're focusing on you building that relationship trust. That's the important thing, using these tools that we're talking about. Remember to reach out to a mental health provider if you need it, and be able to utilize the strategies that you learn from that person or that you learn from videos like this, and incorporate them every day. Don't incorporate 50 every day. It's too many. Pick one or two that works and utilize them. Really focus and build them as best you can. You are not alone on this journey. No way. You can make stronger, fulfilling connections. Absolutely, positively. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.